Hello everybody, welcome back to Matura Express. Today we're going to do some trial exams. Okay, as I just said, today we're going to, my colleague and I are going to show you two different trial exams about the topic media. One of them, or a part of the first one, you actually saw last time when I talked to you about using the preparation time. And so now we're going to do the full exams. At first, let me show you them, or let me show you what they look like. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the first one is about the impact of modern media on young people. So here you have the usual introduction. You will be asked some questions about your career, future plans, etc. This is actually what we're going to talk about next week. How do you talk about your education, your past education and so on. So if you are interested in that, tune in next week. Okay, so here the first task is, as always, the monologue. Your situation is you work as a youth psychiatrist and you have been asked to hold a presentation in front of teachers and parents, which are the examiners, about the issue of teenagers and the media that they mainly consume. Your task is to give a brief introductory talk to your audience about the impact of modern media on young people. Talk about the importance of modern media to youth, young people's reading habits today, the best ways to include media in class. So that's what we focused on last time. And then when you're done, you move on to task 2, which is about making reading assignments more popular in school, more popular with students in school, obviously. So it says here, after your presentation, you open the discussion up to questions from your listeners about how reading assignments in class could be made more popular. Use the information from the attached text, making the review of assigned reading meaningful, see below, as well as your own ideas during the conversation. And then at the top here is the link to this text that belongs to task 2. We didn't include the whole text here in this document because of copyright issues. And if you look at this text on this website, you will see that it has quite a few subheadings, which usually are not included in the text that you will get in your exam. So in your text there won't be any subheadings, just keep that in mind. After your second task, you will have a follow-up discussion. So it says, just as in every exam, after the role play, take an active part in a short discussion about the topic modern media and young people with your examiners. They are going to ask you some questions and you should ask them some questions too. So remember that after task 2, you as well have to continue the discussion, basically. Yeah, so that's the first exam that we're going to do today, that we're going to show you today. And then our second exam about media is about news reporting and modern media. Again, the same introduction. Task 1 is about modern versus traditional media. Your situation at home, you watched an interesting documentary about modern media news reporting on the internet. And you thought about the topic, you want to discuss it with your friends, who are in this case the examiners. Your task is then to describe different types of modern media, talk about the advantages and disadvantages of online and printed newspapers, and comment on the impact of the internet and the way news is reported nowadays. Then you move on to task 2, where I don't know if I mentioned that, but in task 2 you're still in your role. So you basically stay in this role throughout the whole exam. Task 2 is about the way news is consumed today, and you start a discussion with your friend, who is the examiner, and you talk about how you access your news, whether you prefer digital or printed news sources, and which option the general public tends to go for nowadays. Use the information from the attached text, the modern news consumer, as well as your own ideas during the conversation. Then again, the same thing about the follow-up discussion, which you should then engage in, and here's the link if you're interested in looking up the text. Okay, I'd say we're just gonna go for it. So, may I welcome my,
Thank you.
Yeah, my colleague. So, I guess we'll just start with the first exam.
Okay.
So you're here today to take your Matura exams. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Katrin. I'm 21 years old and I'm a beautician. I work in a wellness hotel in Maura, Tirol. I had my training there and now I'm finished with my training and so I work there every day. I do basically face and body treatments, I do manicures and pedicures, and what I like about my job is that I make people feel nice and good about themselves. And in the future I plan on opening up my own beauty salon. So first only with me, and then maybe later on with some other people, employees. But that is my plan for the future. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your interesting introduction. So you've chosen the topic of modern media, the impact of modern media on young people. Should we start with task 1?
Yes. So I want to talk to you about the impact of media on young people, since it has become very crucial in the past times. Social media and modern media have risen and have become or have taken up a very large part in our everyday life. That is why I want to talk to you about that issue, about the impact it has on your lives as teenagers. So let me start with why media is so important in your lives. As we have seen in the past couple of years, or even longer than that, social media have become one of the sources that you constantly use, that you look up for news, that you look up for who is where, that you use to communicate. And so it is really in your life. You share experiences over social media, you share struggles, you may even want to reach out for help if you have found a channel for it. And that is, yes, that is important, and that is quite a good way if you get the help you need and if you know where to look. In addition, you also use social media a lot for communicating with friends. Probably that is the most used channel for that. And furthermore, it is used for entertainment. You can watch videos, you can look up the videos your friends liked, you can read through other people's posts. So you really get a lot of information by just looking up what other people like. And that is quite an advantage because it saves you time. So you have a good reason for using modern media, social media in your life. But it also has disadvantages, and this is what I want to talk to you about too. So it has an impact, a negative impact on your reading habits. So reading is not as popular as before because you have so many videos you can watch. You have so many other ways of being entertained, of getting information read to you, or yes, or having short summaries of what you should read, of what you're asked to read, and that is comfortable. I can understand that, but also reading is very important, and but TV is so much easier. And with every book I as a teacher maybe ask you to read, you just can watch the film. And I understand that as a youth psychiatrist, I understand your motives. But it is quite sad because reading has its benefits. Like you have so much more room for creativity. You have, when you read a book, you don't see the person. You can imagine the person. You can dress him or her like you think he or she should be dressed. And that is, film doesn't give you that option. And that is why sometimes you are disappointed if you read by a film, because they make something else of it than you had expected. So this is a great benefit of reading, and you should really try. But also, what is really where you as parents and teachers come in is that you should not say that new media is the devil, and that you should not, your kids should not use it, or they should stay away from it, but include it. Make it your own. So as a teacher, maybe have some films from the internet or some reading aids from the internet. Bring it into your classroom, use it for your students so that they see that you can come together, that you can be on the same level here. And also as parents, maybe help your kids when they have problems in school with homework, maybe help them by using the internet, by using social media. You need to find your way with it. So in conclusion, I would say that modern media has a definite impact on your students, on your kids, but you should cope with that. You should somehow find a way that you can work with that channel, because it won't go away.
Yes. All right, I will keep that in mind. Thank you. So if we move on to task 2, I believe that then you think that reading assignments in school are a good thing, or what do you think about reading assignments in class, in school?
I definitely think that reading assignments are a very great thing, and thank you for that question. Because you have so much creative space to create them. So when you're a teacher, you don't have to tell your students, read chapter 1, answer these questions. You can do that, but you have so many other options. You may ask them, okay, read these chapters or read this book, and then have a top 10 list of things you hated, of things you didn't like at all. And maybe that's a way of getting your students to read, because then they really can write down their dislikes. That's usually not a thing they can do.
All right.
Or you have them keep a journal. So they are, you give them time and space to read in their own speed, and their own free time, and then you just say, okay, that's the end point. We're gonna come together here and discuss the book, and up until then, you just keep a journal, and you just write down anything that comes into your mind regarding to that book. So I think you have a great chance here of really getting your students to like the book and to read the book. And
that's an interesting idea.
Yes.
Do you think that there's different topics that are more or less interesting for students to use in books, or you know what I mean?
Yes, I would say so. I would definitely say so. So I think in the beginning, you usually as teachers, you have somehow a curriculum, what you have to read, but you usually have a little bit of space where you can say, oh, these 3 books, one of them we have to read, and then give it to the class and then have them discuss it. Or split up the class and let's say like 1/3 reads that book, the other third that book, and then you have a book fair or whatever.
yeah.
So you I think students should choose the topic they really like in the beginning. When they're the more advanced readers, they should also read stuff that they don't like that much because it helps you anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're definitely topics that
Yeah, and there are a lot of creative ways that you can use in the classroom.
Most definitely, yes.
Very
Yes.
interesting. All right. Well, thank you very much for this discussion, this conversation. I like it very much.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for your exam, basically. So we're now done with the first oral exam. Just quickly to talk to you about what we've done here, or what was good or not so good. So I realized, or I saw that my colleague used a lot of very good connectors, which is really important to do that, especially in task 1. So for example, in addition, furthermore, in conclusion, are a lot of really good phrases to use, because that gives a good structure to your speech and lets the listeners, the examiners, know where you are right now, if you're going to finish soon or you're going to keep talking, if you're going to start with a different point, and so on. So that's very good. She also included all of the 3 points that were given here and gave us a lot of very interesting ideas and facts. She also remembered her role as a youth psychiatrist very, very well. And yeah, she talked to me as teacher or parent, which is what you should do here. And yeah, so basically that's what you should do in the exam. And then again in the second part, she also was very creative. She read the text and brought in her own ideas, and we had a nice little conversation. Yeah. Now again, in your exam there will be another follow-up discussion with the whole examination board after task 2, so keep that in mind. And I think we will now just move on to our second oral exam. Here she is again. So if you want to introduce yourself again, you can.
Yes, I will.
Perfect.
Hello, my name's Katrin. I'm a shop assistant. I work at M-Preis, and I have decided to take the Matura because in my future I want to work in management, and so that is why I need the Matura for. Right now I like about my job that I have to deal with people a lot, that I can help people, and that I have nice colleagues and don't sit behind the desk all day, and I hope in management I won't do that either.
All right, thank you. You've chosen the topic of modern versus traditional media, or news reporting and modern media. Would you like to start with task 1?
Yes, thank you. So I've watched this documentary and it just stuck in my head, and that's why I want to talk to you about that, because just I can't let it go. So it was this documentary about different types of modern media, and so it said that we use news apps and that we use Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and then it said that they have advantages and disadvantages, and I thought about the advantages of online newspapers, and I thought they're so much cooler because you have them all the time. They are updated constantly, and I take my cell phone out anywhere or my smartphone out anywhere, and I just have them, and I have the latest news, and I can be sure that it's updated. So I thought that it's so much better than printed newspapers. But then I also thought that I never am really sure like where the sources or what the sources are. So then I thought about that whole Breitbart news thing. And that is really, something you may double check or think twice about. And I thought that's a big disadvantage. So it's really fast, but you really don't know the background of the story. And then I started thinking about the printed newspapers, and they are more traditional. Like my dad and my mom, they would never read online newspapers. They're always having these printed newspapers. It sits there every day on the breakfast table, and so I thought that's a good thing. They're constantly reading news, and you can be quite sure that it's sophisticated, that it's well researched. If you talk about like not about the yellow press, but very sophisticated traditional press, like the Tiroler Tageszeitung maybe, or the New York Times or whatever. Yes, and so, but then I thought the downside of it is that you have to spend money for it. Yeah. And that's what I usually don't do if I read news. They're not very handy. Try to take them with you in the bus or on the tram or whatever. And then they're not up to date actually sometimes, because then something else has happened. But then today I read about this supposedly school shooting in Baden-Württemberg in Germany, and then like half an hour later they had to recall that message because they then said, okay, it wasn't a shooting, they don't even know yet how this student got killed. So then I thought, okay, it's actually a big disadvantage of online news over printed news, because you're so fast and you're like writing down something, you hit the push media thing so that everybody receives it on their cell phones, and then it's wrong. So that's a really point. That's a big point that troubles me. And also then I thought, like, how is it going to be in the future? Like, if the internet is getting stronger and stronger, and more people use the news apps. I mean, I don't know anyone my age who has printed newspapers at home, like for themselves, I mean. And then, where does that lead to? So I think like it's a big rise for fake news maybe. Then social bots come in that just distribute some news, some feeds somewhere, and then you don't really know, like, is this a journalist writing, or is this just a normal guy pretending to be a journalist? So that, in conclusion, I thought, like, wow, this can be really dangerous, the impact of the internet on reported news. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. So you said that you actually consume your news mostly via internet, right?
Yes.
Because I do that as well, of course.
Yeah.
But then again, I was thinking, or basically, I wanted to ask you, where on the internet do you read the news? Because there's, of course, as you said, lots of different sources, right? That can be wrong sometimes.
So usually I have like the Zeit app and the Spiegel app, and then I just scroll through whatever they have, and I don't know, read what I like. The bad thing is, since I don't pay for it, I can only read so many newspaper articles on the Zeit app.
I see.
Saturdays and Sundays, I usually don't use this app because then I would have to pay, and I don't like that.
Yeah. So
yes.
Do you then buy the physical copy, or do you
No, I just wait for Monday to come.
Okay. Because you know what I do?
Yeah.
There's this paper which is called Der Standard in Austria, and they have this WhatsApp service.
Okay.
So you subscribe to the service, and every day in the morning they send you a big WhatsApp message with all the
okay, with links.
The
and
big
stuff?
with links with
Okay.
all the biggest news, and that's a really good thing because that way you can just see what happened really shortly, and then you can click on it if you want to read more. That's a really good idea.
Yes, and the site has it as well.
Yeah.
They call it the morning espresso.
That's funny.
really
That's
really
funny.
nice.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
newspapers are really keeping up
Yeah.
with the times, no? And do you feel like more and more people are switching from paper to online news?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think like our parents and grandparents, they are probably the last ones to read the printed copy, and I think that's a sad thing because I think journalism is a really important part in our society, and also that, for instance, maybe let's look at the FPO. I'm sorry. That you maybe they say that they say for instance whatever, we need to shut down the Brenner highway, and then you have journalists who are paid for sitting down and researching that, so they take on that challenge, they call people, they go there, they check out the situation to comment on that, and then to say where they're right, where they're wrong. And so I'm fearing that if you're not paid for that anymore, that will stop maybe, and then fake news or just statements without real explanation, without real examples, without facts, they have a big rise, and that's...
Yeah, well, maybe we'll then just have to pay for online news.
Yeah, that's
maybe that will get like more...
I think we should, but...
Yeah, because you kind of... You
it's a
want the
dilemma.
right information, right? So there's got to be someone who researches it and who wants
with all
to
what
get
I said, I should pay for news,
that.
but I really...
But then again, if you can do it the other way, then of course you will, but maybe you won't be able to in the future. Maybe you'll have to pay. I don't know.
I think that would be a good thing. Maybe people like me have to be forced to pay.
Maybe. And also, how do you feel about TV news? For example, I've heard about my parents are still watching the news on TV every day, every evening. Do you think that will go on, or do you think?
I think that will stop.
Okay.
I think that's a pattern, like an everyday pattern that is kind of old school. So I mean, like my mom, my dad, they had a 9-to-5 job. That's it. Then they come home, we eat dinner, and then they send us to our rooms or brought us to bed when we were young, and then it was their time, and then they sat on the couch and watched the news. But I think with like how when you go to the university, you might have a lecture at that time. If you have a second or a third job, then you have to work at that time. So I think it's not very adaptable to the new lifestyle we live.
Yeah, that's
true. So I think with all the new working hours, with all the new ways of having home office and stuff, I think that's not...
It won't.
Won't
go on.
No.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think this will conclude our exam. You've done very well.
Thank you.
And so now that we finished the second exam, as you can see, this was a very different situation. Here you had the situation of a friendship or talking to your friend, which of course can be a lot easier than you having to pretend that... Well, it depends. How would I say that? Okay. If you have to pretend that your teacher is your friend because your teacher obviously will examine you, or the examiner is your friend, then again it could be quite difficult. But but for you, for your language, it might be a bit easier to feel like you can use more familiar words and more colloquial language in this situation. Yeah, Katrin stayed in her role very well and used a lot of good, interesting ideas. She also talked about everything that she had to talk about. All the bullet points were included in her speech, and as well in task 2. We had a very, very interesting and good conversation. It really wasn't that much of a question and answer game as well as much as just a normal conversation as it would be in daily life, which can be quite difficult to do in an exam. So that's really good if you can actually achieve that. And yeah, I think that's really all we're going to do today. What you can do at home is, if you've got a friend that you like to do some English exercise with, then you can go back to where I showed you the exams and maybe write down the tasks and just examine each other. So basically just one exam, and then you switch around, you switch roles, and that way you can really prepare very well for your exam in the end. And as you can see, it's really not that hard if you just remember your role and remember all of the bullet points that you have to talk about. So next week we are, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to talk about some OR exam strategies again, especially in the introduction, if you have to talk about your education. So if the examiner asks you what education you have, what schools did you go to, and so on, how can you answer best, what's the good vocabulary to use there, and so on and so forth. So if you're interested in that, tune in next week. And until then, I hope you'll have a good week and a good weekend. And until next time, bye bye.